House of Representatives renews push for special seats for women. President Tinubu seeks reps' approval on police trust fund bill. And National Assembly resumes after Easter, mourns lawmaker. Hello and welcome to You and Your Reps, your window into the decisions shaping Nigeria's House of Representatives. I'm Victor Azo. Thanks for joining us. Debate on constitutional reforms and gender inclusion is gaining renewed attention in the House of Representatives, with lawmakers pushing forward a bill to create special seats for women.
As the National Assembly fine-tunes plans to engrave gender inclusion into the nation's constitution, one voice on the floor is refusing to wait for the final sound of the gavel. A motion by Representative Jesse Okejo is turning up the urgency, pushing for increased women participation and affirmative action now, not later.
The House also called on members to demonstrate patriotism and statement by supporting this bill to secure the constitutional requirement of two-thirds majority in the various legislative outfit.
This motion should say aye. Those against should say nay. The ayes have it.
The attention of members again turns to national security, following the motions from Representatives Usman Balami on killings in Askira Uba, Hawal Federal Constituency of Borno State, and Gabriel Zok, also on killings and kidnappings in Kashia, Kakargo Federal Constituency of Kaduna State. But beyond the calls for intervention, a proposed law emerges, the Department of State Service Research and Development Establishment Bill, a legislation that could reshape how intelligence is gathered in the country past second reading, sponsored by Speaker Tajuddin Abbas and Austin Asama.
To get intelligence using scientific methods cannot be overemphasized.
If there is any place where research and development should be promoted, as far as the security architecture is concerned, is our services.
This bill is referred to the Committee on National Security and Intelligence for further legislative action.
The House resolved that trafficked Nigerians from West African countries be repatriated, rehabilitated and reintegrated. Representative Tolutope Akonde Shadipe moved the motion.
Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has written to the House of Representatives seeking consideration and passage of a bill to repeal and reenact the Nigerian Police Trust Fund Act.
Second day of resumption after the Easter break, but the first for legislative business. Security measures took the spotlight as Speaker Tajuddin Abbas reads executive communication from the presidency, which seeks to strengthen the Nigerian Police Trust Fund.
The proposed repeal and reenactment of the Act establishing the Nigerian Police Trust Fund will significantly enhance the operational capacity, accountability, and sustainability of the NPTF in line with the present security imperatives of the nation.
Security issues continued on the floor. Representative Suleiman Gumi called the attention of the House to what he described as killings and abduction of innocent people in Bukium local government area of Zamfara State.
Deployment of adequate security personnel and necessary operational assets to Bukium local government area of Zamfara State to combat the banditry and terrorism ravaging communities in the area.
Representatives Bami Dele Salam pushed for policies to stabilize agricultural prices and protect farmers, while Alex Ikweche raised concern over rising cost of medicines, canvassing a revival of local pharmaceutical production. Both motions were adopted.
The strategic role of government intervention through price stabilization mechanisms, off-taking, buffer stock programs, and structured commodity off-taking scheme systems in cushioning farmers against market volatility. To urge the federal government through the Federal Ministry of Health, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, and the Central Bank of Nigeria to urgently implement and monitor the full operationalization of the executive order on pharmaceutical production inputs.
Defections continued in the House, with 6 members switching parties. 4 from Kano State defected from NNPP to ADC. They are Sani Wakil, Mukhtar Zakari, Dati Umar, and Abdul Hakim Ado, while Chinedu Emeka from Imo State defected from PDP to APC, and Kabiru Amadu from Zamfara State defected from PDP to APC.
And the National Assembly resumed plenary last Tuesday, following a 3-week Easter recess. Proceedings were, however, subdued as lawmakers paid tribute to their late colleague, Mohammed Hassan.
Both the Senate and House of Representatives reconvened to continue the business of lawmaking as they last sat on Tuesday, the 31st March, during which they passed the national budget, which was last week assented to by President Bola Tinubu. The mood in the two chambers today was somber as they mourned late Mohammed Hassan, member representing Dawakin Kudu Warawa Federal Constituency of Kano State, who died on the 10th of April 2026.
Legislator and dedicated public servant who contributed significantly to legislative development and democratic governance in Nigeria.
It is a dark day for the House of Representatives. As dark as the clothes I'm putting on and the cap I'm wearing. He was also a member of the Constitution Drafting Committee, Review Committee of the House, and worked closely with the Office of the Deputy Speaker.
May the soul of late Honorable Barrister Mohammed Danjuma Hassan rest in perfect peace.
In line with parliamentary tradition, consideration of legislative items was suspended to honor the deceased. Meanwhile, 8 members have shifted alliance across political parties in the Great Chamber. In another development, Senator Ojo Zokalu has urged politicians to do away with unproductive criticisms and channel their energy to strengthening democratic institutions. Speaking to journalists on some political events in the country, Senator Ojo advised politicians to avoid issues that are harmful to Nigeria's image.
Tinubu is contributing his quota, but we are feeling the impact of both governments, and the impact is very good. So reforms do not survive in one day. Reforms is what takes time to survive. Singapore, everybody did reform. Indonesia, China. Nigeria is like 30 years of China today. So we are working. Rome was not built in a day.
He concluded by saying APC is moving to victory like a hurricane by 2027.
You and your reps also caught up with the member representing Isiala Mbano, Okigwe, Onuimo Federal Constituency of Imo State, Miriam Onoha, on the push for the creation of a 6th state in the southeast.
We had agitations for Aba State, we had for Anioma State, we had for Anem State, we had for Adada State, and we also had from Etiti State creation. Members who championed the creation of these states came from Imo, Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, and Delta State, who were pushing for Anioma State. And at one point, they pushed for Anioma to be a part of Anem, so that it became a bigger and better platform, marrying the advantages of more resources, bigger land mass, and better economic viability. But that was met with some challenges about situating the state capital, which many argued that must be within the southeast for it to have that identity of a southeastern state. Members who were accredited to vote on the 2nd of December 2025 were briefed, and there was an intense campaign Those who had sponsored the bill and the promoters of this state creation were invited to make their presentations. The committee was given a task to generate guidelines as to what will form the basis and justification for such states: economic viability, cultural affiliation and affinity, the geographical size, the language, and a whole lot of other criteria, and readiness to take off. After the voting exercise, and state creation garnered the highest number of votes cast to up to 95% margin. And it was announced and declared as the preferred state to be created from the Southeast extraction to make up the sixth number of states, to be the sixth state serving as the state of equilibrium. The Southeast remains the only geopolitical zone with less than 6 states, like you have its counterparts, and except for the Northwest with 7 states. So that in itself is a deprivation in number and of the rights of the people of Southeast when you talk about equity and justice. And having finished with this assignment of the committee, we have presented our report to the Constitution Amendment Committee, committee of the House of Representatives, because like I said earlier, we were constituted by a joint Senate and House committee of both chambers, which sat in Lagos before last year, in 2025. So we're waiting for the joint committee to reconvene, and so that this report will be laid on the floor of each chamber for consideration, and there will be voting by members to accept, either by a yea or a nay. And what is next is for members of the Southeast, and indeed the entire country, to wake up to our sense of equity and brotherhood, and ensure that whenever this bill is being canvassed on the floor of the House, that it garners the necessary number to pass it into law.
Now, you often hear the phrase executive summons during oversight, especially when lawmakers demand answers from government officials. But what does it really mean, and how does it work in practice? Chairman of the House Committee on Rules and Business, Francis Waive, explains.
Executive summons refer to the practice where the legislature invites members of the executive to appear before it to give account of their stewardship, to talk about things that are going on in their ministries, departments, and agencies of government. In our climb, inviting the president or summoning the president, commander-in-chief of the armed forces is rare, and there have been a debate about that. Always, the party that is in power tries to prevent that, but that does not take away the authority from the National Assembly from issuing such a summons. Summons are also issued to ministers and heads of agencies of government, and it happens time and time again, and they usually do appear. Where there is a failure to appear or a reluctance to appear, the law provides that the Speaker of the House, in case of the House of Representatives, or the President of the Senate, can issue a warrant of arrest for any member of the executive who has been invited and refuses to turn up or show up. Honor the invitation of Parliament. All over the world is a standard practice. And here in Nigeria, there have been one or two in previous assemblies where such summons were issued. But of recent, in the 9th and 10th assembly, for instance, where the threat becomes, gets to that point where the Parliament is now saying, or a committee of the House is now saying, this is the last warning. The next one will be the issuance of the warrant of arrest. You find the head of that agency running down straight to appear. Otherwise, ordinarily, with just that summons and a letter written to the head of that agency, the law makes it mandatory for such head of the MDA to appear before Parliament or a committee of Parliament.
This week, the committee segment focuses on National Assembly security, with Chairman Mohammed Garba Ibrahim discussing the bill to establish the Legislative Security Directorate.
What obtained before was that anytime there was vacancy for the Director of Serjeant-At-Arms, there used to be people brought from outside the system. You know, normally the director and then two deputy directors. Normally, as it obtained today, retired military personnel were brought in always. But now with this coming of the establishment of the Directorate of Serjeant-At-Arms, so that will cease to exist. Now, those who are in the career, you know, they will now go up to that level of Director Serjeant-At-Arms. So no one will improvise people now from outside. In simple terms, now there are more or less about 15 gaps which we seek to close. For instance, now everything is defined within the bill. It's only that now because of time. But you'll see that you have the functions and powers of the Directorate, you have the head of the Serjeant-At-Arms and staff of the Directorate, qualification for appointment as head of the Serjeant-At-Arms. All these are defined within the bill. Even tenure of the head of Serjeant-At-Arms, cessation of the head of the Serjeant-At-Arms. So all these are obtained. So all these bills will be automatically now will close the gap that is there now within the National Assembly. We have done the consideration report now. You know, after the second reading of the bill was committed into the committee for the public hearing. The public hearing was conducted, where stakeholders were all invited, and they came, we sat down, we dissected the bill, and we made a thorough analysis of it, and we came up with a report. So now, what we did today, we did the presentation of the bill to the House of Representatives. So, and today, the report has been considered. It was passed by the House. So it's a very big day today. It's a good day for us. We are very happy that the House has considered the report and passed the report.
Now, in practical terms, what does this passage mean for the security of the National Assembly?
This passage means that the House of Representatives has accepted all our recommendations, which are to be implemented in the next phase of the upcoming Directorate of Serjeant-At-Arms of the National Assembly. Previously, there is such Directorate existing today, but it is not at the Directorate level, which means that in practical terms, nobody rises above the post of Deputy Director Serjeant-At-Arms. But today, the Serjeant-At-Arms can go up to any level. They have their own cadre, they have their own career, they can chart their course in the National Assembly Service Commission. So this is a very big step forward. We hope that in the next few years, the security of the National Assembly will be improved, and the security personnel working within the Directorate will have their welfare, their well-being, their everything. They can go from 0 stage up to the highest position in the National Assembly at the level of the Directorate. When I say the highest position, I do not mean the clerk of the National Assembly, because they are two separate cadres, I can say, but this is the security cadre. There was an initial proposal for the Serjeant-At-Arms to bear arms, but we have said no. For this period now, they will not bear arms. We want them to be armless. Then other security men might complement what obtains outside the National Assembly, at the gate and everything. The DSS, the police, the civil defense can do all their work there. But within the National Assembly, the Serjeant-At-Arms will do it. Because once we establish the armory, whosoever is coming will come without arms, and that person cannot overpower the number of Serjeant-At-Arms who will deploy. We are establishing this Directorate in order to boost the morale of the staff within the Directorate. And also we have a legal framework. Now this is a law which is established. It is going to be in the laws of the Federation of Nigeria. It is going to be signed by the President. When there is concurrence now, if it stands today, the bill will be sent to the Senate for concurrence. When that happens, it will be sent to the President for assent, which we hope the President will assent to it. And once he does it, automatically we'll start the framework, for the establishment of the Directorate.
That's you and your reps for this week. Thanks for watching. I'm Victor Azu. See you next time.